Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I am Aneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. India has reported more than 300,000 coronavirus cases for the 12th straight day as its caseload approaches 20 million. The country has registered nearly 370,000 infections and more than 3,400 deaths in the past 24 hours. In Pakistan, 79 people have lost their lives to the virus, while over 4,200 tested positive overnight. Globally, the coronavirus has claimed over 3.2 million lives and infected over 152 million people so far. In Bangladesh, at least 26 people have died after a speedboat collided with a sand-laden bulk carrier and sank in the Padma River near Madaripur district. Police officials say 5 people have been rescued while several others are still missing. The Saudi-led Arab coalition says it has intercepted a ballistic missile and 2 armed drones launched by Yemen's Houthi rebels. In a statement, the coalition said the projectiles were aimed at the southern Saudi city of Najran, but the Houthis claim they targeted the Najran airport and King Khalid airbase with 2 ballistic missiles and 4 drones. In Myanmar, the anti-coup protesters have resumed in different cities after another day of killings by the security forces. The demonstrators have vowed to defy any order from the junta. According to an advocacy group, at least 765 people have been killed in the crackdown on protesters since the February 1st coup. These were the top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. India has reported more than 300,000 coronavirus cases for the 12th straight day, with the caseload approaching 20 million. Globally, the coronavirus has claimed over 3.2 million lives and infected over 152 million people so far. More about the pandemic in this report.
The end of the pandemic seems horrifyingly far as the world continues to report almost 1 million cases every day. The latest Gallup survey shows 1 in every 2 people worldwide saw their earnings drop due to the fallout. Activists are warning of India like oxygen shortages in Bangladesh, Ethiopia, and other countries. They have called for significant international efforts to ensure all countries have sufficient oxygen supplies. Over in India, crematoriums burn through the night to keep up demand as the health system buckles under pressure. The country registered nearly 370,000 infections and more than 3,400 deaths in the past 24 hours. The highly infectious COVID-19 variant first found in India was most recently detected in Malaysia. The US has pledged to negotiate with the World Trade Organization on ways to overcome intellectual property issues for a wider distribution of vaccines. Elsewhere, in a unique and rather shocking study, the English city of Liverpool hosted a one-off music festival to test whether significant events spread COVID-19. Nearly 5,000 people took off their masks and ditched social distancing rules in the name of science and music.
Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported 79 COVID-19 deaths and over 4,200 infections in the last 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the nationwide death toll has risen to 18,149. Pakistan has recorded more than 834,000 cases since the pandemic began. More than 728,000 people have recovered so far. Officials say the number of active cases is approaching 88,000. Meanwhile, the positivity rate of coronavirus cases stands at 9.16%. Meanwhile, Planning Minister Asad Umar says the need for caution in Pakistan remains high as the next few weeks are very critical. Now, a top US military officer says Afghan forces face an uncertain future against the Taliban as the foreign troops begin withdrawing. In an interview with the US media, the Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff General Mark Milley warned of bad possible outcomes. The general described the Afghan military as well equipped and well trained, but declined to say they are fully ready to stand up to the Taliban without direct international backing. Milley added a negotiated settlement between Kabul and the Taliban is still possible. He also talked about the potential of complete withdrawal before the September 11th deadline. The US has urged all parties to support efforts for an inclusive political settlement in Afghanistan. US Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad said this after meeting with Uzbek Foreign Minister Abdul Aziz Kamilov in Tashkent. In a tweet, Khalilzad said the two sides agree that Afghan, regional and international stakeholders must play their part. He stressed the need to end the 40-year-old war in Afghanistan. The envoy said Uzbekistan and the US have also agreed to bolster their trade and economic ties. Now in Bangladesh, at least 26 people have died after a speedboat collided with a sand-laden bulk carrier and sank in the Padma River near Madiripur district. Police officials say 5 people have been rescued while several others are still missing. They said the speedboat was en route to Bangla Bazar from Shimulia ferry ghat carrying over 30 passengers. Police said the rescue operation is still underway. Hundreds of people die each year in ferry accidents in the country due to extensive inland waterways and lax safety standards. Also, at least 11 people have drowned after a boat carrying 24 Europe-bound migrant capsized off Libya. The UN's migration agency says the Libyan Coast Guard rescued 12 migrants near western Zawiya town. It also called for an urgent change in approach to the situation around Libya and the central Mediterranean. The International Organization for Migration says around 7,000 migrants will return to Libya so far this year. Now, the Saudi-led coalition says it has intercepted a ballistic missile and 2 armed drones launched by Yemen's Houthi rebels. In a statement, the coalition said the projectiles were aimed at the southern Saudi city of Najran. But the Houthis claimed they targeted the Najran airport and King Khalid airbase with 2 ballistic missiles and 4 drones. Meanwhile, the battle between coalition-backed Yemeni forces and Houthi rebels rages on for Yemen's oil-rich Marib province. A coalition spokesperson said Yemeni troops have seized several mountainous locations near Marib after fierce clashes. Israeli forces have shot dead a Palestinian woman, accusing her of attempting a stabbing attack. Palestinian state media says the 60-year-old woman died of her wounds at a junction near Bethlehem city. They said occupying troops also wounded 5 Palestinians in Nablus city in the northern West Bank. Eyewitnesses say soldiers raided Beit town and wounded 3 Palestinians with live bullets and another 2 with plastic bullets. Meanwhile, Hamas has warned Israel against evicting Palestinians in East Jerusalem. Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh has called on the European Union to pressure Israel to allow elections to be held in East Jerusalem. Now in Myanmar, anti-coup protests have resumed in different cities after another day of killing by the security forces. The demonstrators have vowed to defy any order from the junta. A large number of people also gathered in the town of Loi Khao, marking the global Myanmar Spring Revolution. Meanwhile, the US, the European Union and 15 other countries have demanded the release of media workers. They call for the establishment of freedom of information and the end of internet restrictions in the country. According to an advocacy group, at least 765 people have been killed in the crackdown on dissent so far. Now moving on to Niger, where gunmen have killed 16 soldiers and wounded 6 others in an ambush in the southwestern Dahua region. Security officials said it is unclear who carried out the attack, as no group has claimed responsibility yet. But the area is overrun by militant groups with links to ISIS. Since 2018, militant groups have killed hundreds of soldiers and civilians after broadening their reach beyond bases in Mali. In Iraq, at least 2 rockets have landed within the perimeter of Baghdad International Airport. The Iraqi military says 1 rocket was also intercepted and downed near the airport. Security officials said the rockets were launched from an area close to the airport. They added that there were no reports of damage or casualties. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack, but pro-Iran armed groups in Iraq have claimed similar incidents in the past. Now, Chad's ruling military council has named a transitional government after the death of President Idriss Deby. But leading opposition figures have rejected the interim government, calling it the continuation of an old order. A military spokesperson said Deby's son Mohammed has named 40 ministers and deputy ministers. In a statement, he said the new National Reconciliation Ministry will be led by Achek ibn Omar, a former rebel chief. The opposition says the new setup will not go far as long as Chad doesn't have a civilian president and a military. Thousands took to the streets last week in protest against the military rule, and at least 6 died in clashes with the police. Now, New Zealand says differences with China are becoming extremely harder to reconcile as Beijing's role changes. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern was speaking at the China Business Summit in Auckland. Ardern said there were areas in which China and New Zealand cannot and will not agree. But these differences need to define their bilateral relationship. She called on Beijing to act more responsibly as a growing power. Ardern's comments follow pressure from the West over Wellington's reluctance to use the Five Eyes alliance against China. In Spain, the people of Madrid are all set to vote in a snap regional election on Tuesday. Polls suggest the Conservative regional president, Isabel Díaz Ayuso, is on course for victory. Her Popular Party is well on its way to double the share of seats in Madrid's regional parliament, but the party may need support of the far-right party to form a new administration. Tensions between right and left have spiked in Madrid, where Ayuso is running with the slogan "Communism or Freedom." The vote is in the region seen as the midterm test for the country's fragmented political class. More news coming up after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, Sydney has been enveloped in a hazardous bushfire smoke as authorities carry out controlled forest burning. Ferries have been cancelled and the city's 5 million residents were told to stay indoors. Fire services were forced to scale back plans for further burns as pollution reached hazardous levels. Levels of hazardous PM2.5 pollution are among the worst in the world at more than 190 on the Air Quality Index. The smoke is forecast to clear as the day progresses. A giant piece of artwork by Britain's David Hockney is lighting up several of the world's largest digital billboards. It is meant to inspire hope after a year of on-off lockdowns. Details in this report.
You might be sick of off-screens, but this is one virtual event you don't want to miss. Celebrated British artist David Hockney is bringing a new sun to 5 cities around the world. It will be shown once a day for the month of May in London, New York, Tokyo, Seoul, and Los Angeles. The organizers say the work called "Remember You Cannot Look at the Sun or Death for Very Long" is a symbol of hope and collaboration. As the world awakens from its lockdowns to protect populations from COVID-19, the artwork has already been emblazoned across the iconic billboard of London's Piccadilly Circus.
I don't really know if it inspired a lot, to be honest, but it's just a bit of light, really, and I think at the moment it's just that sunshine thing just feels good with lockdown hopefully easing up.
The global event coincides with the release of Hockney's new book Spring Cannot Be Cancelled and his Royal Academy exhibition, The Arrival of Spring, Normandy 2020, which will open in London on 23rd of May.
Now in Spain, fans cheered as matadors returned to the Madrid bull ring for the first time since the beginning of the pandemic. Let's find out in this report. carrying red and yellow flowers to show bullfighting as a symbol of Spanish culture. The fans watched matadors taking on 7 bulls at Madrid's Las Ventas bull ring. The charity contest was organized to raise money for jobless bullfighters and other workers in the sector. A maximum of 6,000 people were allowed at the event, equivalent to 40% capacity at the arena. Almost all of Spain's bull rings or plazas remained closed during the last year due to the lockdown restrictions, plunging the controversial spectacle and its matadors into a financial crisis. Spaniards are divided over the bloody sport, with some considering it an art form, while others viewing it as cruel. Bullfighting's popularity has declined in recent years. It has met opposition from an increasingly powerful animal rights movement and some left-wing councils that refuse to pay for bull festivals. Stocks in Asia Pacific slipped, with investors analyzing the impact of the COVID-19 surge in India and the spread of its variant to other countries. Major markets in China and Japan closed for holidays. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index is leading the losses, falling nearly 1.5%. Seoul's Kospi has also shed close to 1%. However, the ASX 200 in Australia is trading flat. And with that, we come to the end of this news bulletin. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.